The sound of wedding bells should bring joy, not the crushing weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. I stood at the church entrance holding the boutonniere I'd carefully chosen that morning. "Dad, you're not invited. Get out," my daughter commanded, her voice sharp as broken glass, not meeting my eyes while her new mother-in-law smirked behind her. The guests whispered, phones already recording my humiliation. I had exactly 2 hours before the reception would begin, 2 hours to decide whether to walk away forever or remind everyone exactly who built the life they were celebrating. What breaks first in a man pushed too far, his heart or his silence? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The boutonniere crushed in my grip as I staggered back from the church steps. 22 years of raising Sophia, and this is what I get, the white carnation with baby's breath. I'd spent 20 minutes at the florist this morning, wanting everything perfect for my daughter's wedding day. Now it's just wilted petals between my trembling fingers. I woke up at 5 a.m., pressed my best suit, the navy one I bought for her college graduation. Polished my shoes until they gleamed. I even stopped at that fancy coffee shop on 5th Street to calm my nerves with a cup of their expensive brew. All morning, my heart hammered with excitement and pride, my little girl getting married. The parking lot gravel crunched under my feet as I retreated to my pickup truck. Through the windshield, I could see the church doors still open, guests streaming in wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Designer dresses, Italian suits, jewelry that caught the afternoon sun like scattered diamonds. And there I was, Ethan Carter, steel mill supervisor turned small business owner, feeling every inch the outsider in my department store suit. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Sophia's eyes, or rather, how she wouldn't meet them. 27 years old, radiant in her $1,000 dress, and she couldn't even look at the man who'd changed her diapers, taught her to ride a bike, worked 3 jobs to pay for her education. When she said, "Get out," her gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder, like I was a stranger asking for directions. Victoria Ashworth's smirk burned in my memory. The way she'd positioned herself behind Sophia, one perfectly manicured hand resting on my daughter's shoulder like she owned her, which, apparently, she did. The woman who'd never missed a chance to remind me that her family traced their lineage back to the Mayflower, while I traced mine back to County Cork and a lot of honest sweat. My phone buzzed. 47 missed calls from Tony Rodriguez, my catering manager. I should answer. Carter's Catering had the contract for the reception. 300 guests, prime rib, open bar, the works. But my hands shook too badly to hold the phone steady. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, centered around the daughter who just told me to get out of her life. I glanced at my watch, 1:15. The ceremony had just started, which meant I had exactly 2 hours before the reception would begin. 2 hours to decide whether to walk away forever, nurse my wounds in private, and let Sophia have the perfect wedding she wanted without the embarrassment of her working-class father. Or 2 hours to remind everyone exactly who built the life they were celebrating. The irony wasn't lost on me. Through the service entrance of the Riverside Country Club, I could see my catering trucks lined up like white soldiers. My company, my food. My employees were setting up tables for a reception I wasn't invited to attend, for a wedding I'd unknowingly paid for with money earned from 16-hour days and calloused hands. What breaks first in a man pushed too far, his heart or his silence? I'd spent 22 years protecting Sophia from that question. Maybe it was time to find out the answer. A text from Tony flashed on my screen. "Boss, we got a problem. Big problem. Call me now." I knew what the problem was, or rather, who. But for the first time in 22 years, I wasn't sure I wanted to solve it. Maybe some problems were meant to teach lessons. Maybe some daughters needed to learn that actions have consequences. Maybe some fathers needed to learn when to stop rescuing children who saw rescue as weakness. The church bells began their processional toll. Sophia's wedding was starting. Without me. The man who'd given her everything, including a name that wasn't even hers by birth. I sat in the truck cab, engine off, windows down, listening to the wedding march drift across the parking lot. My reflection stared back from the rearview mirror, 58 years old, graying temples, lines around my eyes that told the story of 2 decades of single fatherhood. When did I become the kind of man my own daughter was ashamed to acknowledge? The memory hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah's funeral, 22 years ago. Sophia, barely 5 years old, clutching my hand as dirt fell onto her mother's casket. "Daddy, why did Mommy go away?" she'd whispered, and I'd promised her then that I'd never leave, never let her feel abandoned again. I kept that promise. God help me, I kept it too well. Sarah and I had found Sophia on a cold February morning in 1999. 3 days old, wrapped in a hospital blanket, left on the steps of St. Mary's, the same church where she just banished me from her wedding. The note pinned to her blanket was written in shaky handwriting, "Please love her, I can't." Sarah's eyes filled with tears the moment she held that tiny baby. "She's ours, Ethan," she'd said. "She's meant to be ours." We never told Sophia she was adopted. Why burden a child with questions about parents who didn't want her when she had parents who'd move mountains for her? Sarah and I agreed. Sophia would know only love, only security, only the unshakable certainty that she belonged with us. After Sarah died in that car accident, I doubled down on that promise. 3 jobs, morning shift at the steel mill, afternoons at Murphy's Construction, weekends catering events from my kitchen. Every dollar went into Sophia's future. Private school at Sacred Heart Academy, dance lessons, piano, summer camps with kids whose parents drove Mercedes while I drove a 10-year-old Ford with 200,000 miles. The other parents at school functions would smile politely and ask what I did for work. "I'm in food service," I'd say, because it sounded better than admitting I started my catering business flipping burgers at wedding receptions to pay for my daughter's education. Sophia never seemed embarrassed then. She'd run to me after dance recitals, her face glowing with pride. "Daddy, did you see my pirouette?" At 14, she wrote me a card. "Best dad in the world. Thank you for everything." I still have that card, yellowed and creased from being carried in my wallet. But college changed her. State University meant new friends, new influences, new ideas about what family should look like. When I visited her dorm freshman year, she introduced me to her roommate as my guardian. Not father, guardian, like I was some court-appointed obligation rather than the man who'd held her hair when she was sick, taught her to drive, walked her through her first heartbreak. By sophomore year, the visits stopped. "I'm really busy with studies, Dad. Maybe next semester." By junior year, she'd blocked my number during finals week. "You stress me out when you call so much. I need space." Senior year brought the Ashworths into our lives. James Jr., heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, fell for my daughter at some charity gala. Victoria Ashworth took one look at Sophia's beauty, intelligence, and mysterious family background and decided she'd found the perfect daughter-in-law, provided certain inconvenient truths could be managed. "Where are you from originally, dear?" Victoria had asked during their first meeting, her voice dripping with forced warmth. "Here and there," Sophia had answered, suddenly vague about the small Pennsylvania town where she'd lived her entire life. "My family moved around a lot." I should have corrected her. Should have said, "Actually, we've lived in the same house on Maple Street since you were 5. But Sophia's eyes pleaded with me to stay quiet, and I'd never been able to deny her anything. That was my first mistake. The second was believing she'd come back to herself once the novelty wore off. The third was continuing to pay for everything, wedding dress, venue, flowers, catering, while she pretended I didn't exist. My phone rang. "Tony, again." "Boss, you gotta get down here. They're saying the food contract got canceled. Some lady named Ashworth is screaming about health code violations and threatening to sue us into bankruptcy. The staff doesn't know what to do." I closed my eyes. Victoria's masterstroke. Get rid of the inconvenient father and his reminder of working-class origins in one move. No doubt she had replacement caterers on standby, probably charging 3 times what I bid for half the quality. "How much food do we have prepped?" "All of it. Prime rib for 300, sides, desserts, the whole 9 yards. If we don't serve it today, we're looking at $15,000 in losses." $15,000, more than I made in my first year of business. Money I couldn't afford to lose, especially not after covering the wedding expenses that were supposedly being handled by the generous Ashworth family. I stared at the church, watching late arrivals hurry up the steps in their finery. Soon they'd all move to the country club, expecting a feast that might not be there, expecting perfection from a family that had built their reputation on lies. "Tony," I said slowly, "how long would it take you to set up service in the church parking lot?" "Boss, what are you talking about?" "Food trucks do it all the time. We've got the portable equipment. How long?" A pause. Then, "Give me 40 minutes and a crew of 6, but why would we—" "Because," I said, starting the engine, "it's time my daughter learned who really built the life she's celebrating." The pickup truck roared to life. Through the church windows, I could see the ceremony in progress. Sophia in her white dress, James in his perfect tuxedo, Victoria beaming in the front pew. All of them are about to discover what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you, literally. The catering setup moved like a military operation. Tony and his crew transformed the church parking lot into an impromptu reception venue while wedding guests remained oblivious inside. White tablecloths snapped in the afternoon breeze as our team arranged chafing dishes, carved ice sculptures, and stationed bartenders behind portable bars that gleamed like something out of a magazine spread. "This is either brilliant or career suicide," Tony muttered, adjusting the flowers around the prime rib station. He'd been with me since the beginning, a line cook who believed in my vision of bringing fine dining to working-class celebrations. If anyone understood the stakes, it was him. "Maybe both," I admitted, watching my employees work with the precision I'd drilled into them over 8 years of building Carter's Catering from nothing. These weren't just staff members, they were Maria, whose son's medical bills I'd helped cover, Doug, whose gambling problem I'd walked him through recovery from, Janet, whose husband left her with 3 kids and a mountain of debt until I gave her a management position and the stability to rebuild. They worked now with the loyalty earned through years of being treated like family rather than expendable labor. The kind of loyalty I'd thought I had with my own daughter before she slowly pulled away over the years. The ceremony music swelled to its crescendo. Through the stained glass windows, I could see shadows moving as the couple presumably exchanged vows. James promised to love and honor Sophia. Sophia promised to forsake all others. The irony burned like acid in my throat. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Carter, this is Father Murphy. I conducted the ceremony today. There seems to be some confusion about the reception arrangements. Could you call me?" Father Murphy. The same priest who'd baptized Sophia when she was 6, confirmed her at 13, listened to her confess her childhood sins, and blessed her dreams. He'd known our family for 17 years, watched me raise my daughter through soccer games and school plays, through teenage rebellion and academic triumph. If anyone could see through Victoria's lies, it would be him. I called him back. "Ethan." His familiar voice carried relief. "Thank God. Victoria Ashworth told me you'd had some kind of breakdown and that your catering license was suspended. She said the family had to make emergency arrangements with another company, but something didn't sit right." "Father, how long have you known me?" 17 years. "And in all that time, you've been nothing but devoted to that girl." "Then trust me when I say Mrs. Ashworth's information is incorrect. My license is current, my company is solvent, and my mental health is just fine. What's not fine is being excluded from my daughter's wedding while being expected to cater it for free." Silence stretched between us. Finally, "Sophia told me you weren't coming because you disapproved of James." Another lie. As if I'd ever disapprove of any man who could make my daughter happy. As if my opinion had ever mattered enough to influence her decisions. "Father, I'm in the parking lot right now. When the ceremony ends and people start looking for the country club reception, they're going to find me instead. I've got enough food for an army and a few things to say about who really paid for this wedding." "Ethan." His voice carried a warning. "This is sacred ground. Whatever's happened between you and Sophia, what's happened is that I spent 22 years loving a child who's decided I'm not worthy of acknowledgement. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to provide the service I contracted for and maybe remind my daughter where she came from." The church doors opened. Guests spilled onto the front steps like water from a broken dam, all laughter and congratulations and flashing cameras. Sophia emerged on James's arm, radiant and glowing, everything a bride should be. For a moment, seeing her happiness, I almost reconsidered. Then Victoria appeared beside her, whispering something in her ear that made Sophia's smile tighten. Victoria's eyes swept the parking lot, taking in the catering setup with unconcealed fury. She'd planned this moment perfectly. The awkward gap between ceremony and reception, the country club location that would separate the working-class father from his daughter's new society friends. She hadn't planned on the father fighting back. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, stepping forward with the confidence that came from 20 years of addressing wedding crowds. "If you'll direct your attention to the reception area, Carter's Catering is proud to present your dinner service." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests turned, confused, looking between the parking lot feast and the wedding party on the church steps. Some pulled out phones, already sensing drama worth recording. Victoria marched toward me, her face a mask of controlled rage. "Mr. Carter, you're trespassing. I demand you leave immediately or I'll call the police." "On what grounds?" I asked calmly. "I have a valid contract to provide catering services for this wedding. The venue may have changed, but the service remains the same. The contract was canceled due to health code violations." I pulled out my phone displaying my current health department rating. A+ inspection last month. Would you like to call them and verify? Sophia approached, still in her wedding dress, her face pale beneath the makeup. Up close, I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the cracks in the confidence she'd worn like armor. "Dad, what are you doing?" The word hit me like a physical blow. Dad. Not Ethan, not that man, but Dad. After everything, after the exclusion and lies and betrayal, some part of her still recognized what we'd been to each other. "I'm doing what I've done for 22 years, sweetheart, taking care of you." "This isn't taking care of me. This is embarrassing for me in front of my friends." "Your friends?" I let the words hang in the air. "Tell me, Sophia, what have you told your friends about me?" Her silence was enough. James stepped forward, his jaw set in what I supposed passed for determination among the privileged. "Sir, I think you should respect my wife's wishes and leave." Wife. They'd been married for all of 10 minutes, and already he was claiming ownership, already placing himself between Sophia and the man who'd raised her. "Your wife," I said slowly, "seems to have forgotten who paid for her education, who worked 3 jobs to give her the opportunities that led her to you, who loved her when she had no one else in the world." "That's enough!" Sophia's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to guilt-trip me just because you made sacrifices I never asked for." The wedding guests fell silent, creating a circle around our family drama like spectators at a gladiator match. Phones recorded every word, every gesture, preserving this moment for whatever viral infamy awaited. You never asked for them because you were 5 years old and your mother had just died. But I'm asking you now, was it all worth nothing to you? Every bedtime story, every school play, every midnight trip to the emergency room when you were sick? Tears filled her eyes, but her voice remained hard. "You're not even my real father anyway." The words landed like a physical blow, driving the air from my lungs. Around us, the crowd gasped. Victoria's smirk returned, triumphant. She'd armed my daughter with the one weapon guaranteed to destroy me. But instead of collapsing, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Finally, we were done pretending. The parking lot fell silent, except for the whisper of wind through the oak trees and the distant hum of interstate traffic. Sophia's words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion, and I watched my daughter's face cycle through emotions. Defiance, fear, regret, then defiance again. "So you know," I said quietly. "How long?" "Since I was 16. Her voice wavered but held steady. "I found the adoption papers in your desk when I was looking for my birth certificate for my driver's license." 16. She'd known for 11 years and never said a word. 11 years of pretending, of letting me believe our secret was safe, that she was protected from the truth of being abandoned. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see if you'd tell me yourself, if you'd ever stop lying to me. The accusation hit harder than expected. Lying, as if protecting a child from the brutal reality of abandonment was deception rather than love. Victoria stepped closer, sensing victory. James, perhaps we should move this to somewhere more private. No. Sophia held up a hand. If we're doing this, we're doing it here. Dad wants public honesty? Fine, let's be honest. She turned to face the wedding guests, many of whom were pulling out phones to record the spectacle. Everyone wants to know the truth? Here it is. This man found me as a baby and decided to play the hero. He and his wife took me in, and when she died, he spent the next 22 years reminding me of everything he'd sacrificed for someone else's unwanted child. That's not, I started, but she cut me off. Every time I disappointed him, every time I didn't live up to his expectations, I could see it in his eyes. The question, was saving me worth it? Was I worth 3 jobs and no social life and watching all his friends move on with their lives while he was stuck raising someone else's mistake? The crowd murmured, some faces sympathetic to Sophia, others horrified by her words, but I could only stare at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, this stranger who'd rewritten our entire history. Is that really what you think? I asked. That you were a burden? I know what I was, what I am. And I know that marrying into the Ashworth family gives me a chance to be something different, someone with a real history, a real family name, real connections. Real family. I tasted the bitterness of those words. What makes them more real than us? Blood, she exploded. History, legacy, not some sad story about a steel worker who found a baby and decided to play house. James reached for her arm. Sophia, maybe you should what? Pretend some more? I'm tired of pretending. I spent my whole childhood grateful for scraps, grateful to belong anywhere, even if it meant wearing thrift store clothes to school with kids whose parents were doctors and lawyers. I watched my daughter unravel 22 years of our life together, reducing every moment of love to charity, every sacrifice to obligation. But underneath her anger, I heard something else, shame. Not shame of me, but shame of herself. Shame of wanting more than what we had, shame of loving people who couldn't give her the social status she craved. You think I don't know what the other parents said about me? I asked quietly. You think I didn't see the looks when I showed up to your school events in my work clothes? You think I didn't know I wasn't good enough for Sacred Heart Academy parents? Sophia's defiance flickered. Then why? Because you deserved to be there. You deserved every opportunity, every chance to become whoever you wanted to be, even if that person was someone who didn't want me in her life. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the little girl who used to climb onto my lap when thunderstorms scared her, the teenager who cried when boys broke her heart, the young woman who called me from college when she was homesick before she learned to be ashamed of home. Then Victoria stepped between us. This is very touching, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, but I think we've all heard enough. James, why don't you take Sophia to the car? We can sort out this catering situation later. Actually, said a new voice, I think we should sort it out now. Father Murphy approached from the church steps, carrying a manila folder. Behind him walked a woman I recognized, Ms. Patricia Wells from the County Health Department. Mrs. Ashworth, Father Murphy continued, I took the liberty of calling Ms. Wells when you claimed Mr. Carter's business license was suspended. Imagine my surprise when she told me Carter's Catering received an A+ inspection just last month. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. There must be some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Ms. Wells interrupted, is your claim that we shut down his operation. Mr. Carter runs one of the cleanest kitchens in the county. I'm curious where you heard otherwise. Victoria's eyes darted between the health inspector and the growing crowd of wedding guests. Some were beginning to understand that they'd witnessed something more than family drama. They'd seen deliberate sabotage. I may have been misinformed, Victoria said carefully. Misinformed, I tasted the word. Or lying to justify canceling a contract with someone you considered beneath your family. This has nothing to do with class. Mrs. Ashworth. My voice cut through her protests. I've been working weddings for 8 years. I know exactly what this is about. The question is whether your son and my daughter do." James looked between his mother and his new wife, confusion clear on his face. "Mother, you said his business was shut down for health violations." "I was protecting our family from what? From the man who raised the woman your son just married? From the business owner who was professional enough to cater your event despite being excluded from it?" Sophia stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling against the asphalt. "Dad, I know you're angry, but—" "I'm not angry, sweetheart. I'm heartbroken. There's a difference." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. "Do you remember writing this?" She took it reluctantly, unfolded it, and I watched her face change as she read her own 8-year-old handwriting. "Dear Daddy, thank you for taking care of me when Mommy went to heaven. You are the best daddy in the whole world, and I love you more than ice cream. Love, Sophia. P.S. Will you love me forever?" Her hands trembled, holding the letter. I wrote back on the same piece of paper. I said quietly, "Do you remember what I said?" She didn't answer, but tears were streaming down her face now, cutting tracks through her makeup. I said, "Forever and always, sweetheart. Nothing will ever change that. Not time, not distance, not anything. You are my daughter, and I am your father, and that's a choice we make every day, not an accident of biology." The parking lot was completely silent now. Even the traffic seemed muted, as if the world were holding its breath. "I still mean it," I said, "every word. But choices work both ways, Sophia. And today, you chose to make me a stranger at your wedding. So now I need to choose what that means for us going forward." I turned to address the wedding guests, many of whom were crying openly now. "Ladies and gentlemen, Carter's Catering is pleased to offer you the finest reception dinner you'll find anywhere in the county. The prime rib is perfect, the wine is excellent, and everything is paid for. Please, enjoy yourselves." Then I looked back at my daughter one final time. "The food is my wedding gift to you, Sophia. Consider it payment in full for 22 years of unconditional love. After today, we're even." I turned and walked toward my truck, leaving behind the sound of 300 wedding guests and one heartbroken daughter calling my name. But I didn't look back. Some choices, once made, have to be lived with, even if they break your heart. I made it halfway to my truck before Sophia caught up to me. "Dad, wait, please." Her wedding dress trailed behind her, picking up dust and grass stains that would never come out. Somehow that seemed fitting. The pristine image finally getting dirty, revealing the reality underneath. I stopped but didn't turn around. "What else is there to say, Sophia?" "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" Her voice broke. "I didn't mean it to happen like this." Now I did turn, and what I saw nearly undid me. My daughter, still beautiful in her wedding dress, but with mascara streaked down her cheeks and her carefully styled hair beginning to fall apart. She looked younger suddenly, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child. "How did you mean it to happen?" She hugged herself, shivering despite the warm afternoon. I thought if you just stayed away, it would be easier. For everyone." "Easier for who?" "For me." The words exploded out of her. "Do you know what it's like, growing up knowing you're not really wanted? Knowing your real parents threw you away like garbage? Sophia, and then having to be grateful every single day to the people who took you in? Having to be the perfect daughter because what if you mess up and they decide you're not worth the trouble either?" The pain in her voice was raw, primal. This was the fear she'd carried for 22 years, the terror I'd thought I was protecting her from by keeping the adoption secret. "Is that really what you thought? That our love was conditional?" "I didn't know. I never knew if I was good enough, if I was worth all the sacrifices you made. And the worst part was seeing how hard you worked, how tired you were, how you never dated anyone or had your own life because you were too busy taking care of me." I stared at her, understanding finally dawning. "You think you ruined my life. Didn't I?" She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, a gesture so familiar from her childhood it made my chest ache. "You were 28 when Mom died. You could have remarried, had your own biological children, had a normal life. Instead, you got stuck with someone else's problem." "Sophia, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "You were never a problem. You were never a burden. You were the best thing that ever happened to your mother and me. The day we found you was the day we became a family. But your own biological children. After your mother died, I could have remarried. I could have tried to have other children. Do you know why I didn't?" She shook her head. "Because I already had a daughter. I already had you. Why would I need anyone else?" Fresh tears started down her cheeks. "But the Ashworths said what they needed to say to make you believe you belonged with them instead of with me. They played on your deepest fears, Sophia. They used your own insecurities as weapons." James appeared at her shoulder, having followed at a discreet distance. "Sophia, we should probably—" "James," I said quietly, "do you love my daughter?" He looked startled by the directness of the question. "Of course I do." "Then you need to understand something. This woman you just married has spent her entire life afraid of being abandoned again. She's been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to decide she's not worth the effort. Your mother figured that out and used it to convince Sophia that I was the liability she needed to shed." James looked between Sophia and me, confusion clear on his face. "But Mother said—" "Your mother lied." The words came from behind us. Victoria approached with measured steps, her face a mask of controlled fury. "She lied about the health department, she lied about my business license, and she lied about my character. The question is, what else has she lied about?" Victoria's composure finally cracked. "How dare you suggest that I—" "Mrs. Ashworth," Father Murphy interrupted, appearing with Ms. Wells still in tow. "I think we need to clear up a few more misunderstandings." He opened his manila folder and pulled out several documents. "When you told me that Mr. Carter was unstable and potentially dangerous, I felt obligated to verify that claim. I made some calls." Victoria's face went pale. "Interesting what I found out. 3 separate complaints filed against Carter's catering in the past month, all claiming health violations. All filed by someone using different names but the same phone number. A phone number that traces back to your residence." The wedding guests, who had been keeping a respectful distance, began to move closer. This was no longer just family drama. It was the exposure of a deliberate campaign of sabotage. "Furthermore," Father Murphy continued, "I spoke with Sacred Heart Academy. You contacted them last week claiming that Sophia had fabricated her transcripts and that her tuition had been paid with fraudulent funds. You demanded they investigate her academic record." Sophia gasped. "You tried to destroy my college applications?" Victoria's mask slipped completely. "I was protecting my son from gold digging." "Mother!" James's voice cracked like a whip. "That's enough." But Victoria wasn't done. 20 years of carefully cultivated composure dissolved in a flood of venom. "You people think you can just take whatever you want, don't you? Take a baby that isn't yours. Take opportunities that belong to better families. Take my son away from the life he was born to live." "Victoria," James said quietly, "Sophia didn't take me away from anything. I chose her." "You chose a lie. This whole family is built on lies. She's not his daughter, he's not her father, and none of this is real." I stepped forward, feeling calmer than I had all day. "You're right about one thing, Mrs. Ashworth. Biology didn't make Sophia my daughter. Choice did. Every day for 22 years I chose to love her, to protect her, to sacrifice for her. And every day for 22 years she was mine and I was hers. Not because we shared DNA, but because we shared something better. Commitment." I turned to address the crowd of wedding guests, my voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. This woman," I gestured to Victoria, "didn't just try to exclude me from my daughter's wedding. She tried to destroy my business, my reputation, and my relationship with the child I raised from infancy. Why? Because she couldn't stand the thought of her precious bloodline mixing with someone she considered beneath her station." Victoria's face was twisted with rage now. "You're nobody, a blue-collar nobody who got lucky when he found a pretty baby to use as a meal ticket." The slap echoed across the parking lot like a gunshot. Everyone turned to stare at James, whose hand was still raised from striking his own mother. "That's my wife you're talking about," he said quietly, "and that's my father-in-law you just insulted. Victoria touched her reddening cheek, shock replacing rage. James, I was only trying to— You were trying to destroy the woman I love and the man who raised her. In the name of what? Family honor? Social standing? I'm ashamed to call you my mother. He turned to Sophia, who was staring at him with something like wonder. I married you, not your bank account or your social connections. I married you because you're kind and intelligent and funny and beautiful. I don't care if you were raised by wolves, you're perfect exactly as you are. Then he looked at me. Mr. Carter, I owe you an apology, several apologies, and I owe you a debt of gratitude for raising the woman I love. If you'll let me, I'd like to try to be worthy of being your son-in-law. Sophia was crying openly now, years of fear and shame pouring out of her. Dad, I'm so sorry. I was so scared of not being good enough that I tried to become someone else entirely. I threw away everything real for something fake. I opened my arms, and she fell into them the way she had when she was 5 years old, and the world was too big and scary to face alone. She felt so small against my chest, despite being 27 and married and supposedly all grown up. You were always good enough, I whispered into her hair. You were always more than good enough. You were my daughter from the moment we found you, and nothing, not time, not distance, not social climbing, mothers-in-law, could ever change that. Around us, the wedding guests burst into spontaneous applause. Someone was crying. Maybe everyone was crying. Even Ms. Wells from the health department was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But Victoria wasn't finished. With her son's betrayal and her plans in ruins, she made one final desperate play. Fine, she screamed. You want the truth? I'll give you the truth about precious little Sophia's real parents. The parking lot fell silent. I know who they were, Victoria continued, her voice venomous with spite. I hired a private investigator years ago when James first started dating her. Do you want to know what we found? Sophia stiffened in my arms. Victoria, stop, James warned, but she was beyond reason now. Her mother was a 15-year-old drug addict, and her father was a 30-year-old dealer who got her hooked. She was born addicted to heroin and abandoned because even drug dealers didn't want a sick baby cramping their lifestyle. Sophia made a sound like she'd been punched. Around us, the wedding guests shifted uncomfortably. This had gone too far, crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. But I just held my daughter tighter and looked Victoria directly in the eyes. Thank you, I said quietly. Everyone stared at me. Thank you for confirming what I've always known. That baby's biological parents didn't deserve her. They threw away the most precious gift in the world, and Sarah and I got to keep it. Their loss was our gain, and I've never been more grateful for anything in my life. I pulled back to look at Sophia's tear-stained face. Do you hear me, sweetheart? I'm grateful. Not burdened, not obligated, not trapped. Grateful. Those people gave you life, but they didn't give you love. They didn't give you a family. They didn't give you a home. We did, and I would make the same choice again every single day for the rest of my life. Sophia buried her face in my chest and sobbed like her heart was breaking, but I could feel the tension leaving her body, years of fear and shame finally released. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red but clear. I want to come home, Dad. Not to the Ashworths, not to some fancy mansion. Home. To you. You never left, sweetheart, I told her. The door was always open. It always will be. Behind us, Victoria Ashworth stood alone, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Her son had chosen love over loyalty, her new daughter-in-law had chosen authenticity over acceptance, and her grand plans had collapsed into dust. Justice, it turned out, didn't require revenge. Sometimes it just required the truth. 6 months later, I walked Sophia down the aisle for the second time. This wedding was different, smaller, real. Instead of stained glass windows and marble columns, we had my backyard with string lights hung between oak trees that had watched Sophia grow up. Instead of 300 strangers in designer clothes, we had 50 people who actually knew our story. My catering crew, Sophia's friends from college who'd stood by her through the aftermath, neighbors who'd watched me raise her from a baby. James's father attended. Richard Ashworth had flown in from Boston after divorcing Victoria in a very public and very expensive proceeding that made headlines in the society pages. Thank you, he'd told me quietly during the reception planning, for showing my son what real character looks like and what fake character costs. Victoria wasn't there. She'd moved to Europe after the scandal, claiming she needed to find herself in the aftermath of losing her family. I felt sorry for her in a way. She'd built her entire identity on bloodlines and social status, and when those proved worthless, she had nothing left. Father Murphy officiated again, but this time his smile was genuine. The ceremony was simple, focused on the love between James and Sophia rather than the performance of wealth and status. When they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. "James," Sophia said, her voice steady and clear, "I promise to love you not because of what you can give me, but because of who you are. I promise to choose you every day, the way my dad chose me every day for 22 years, until I learned that love isn't about blood, it's about showing up." James's vows were equally simple. "Sophia, I promise to love your whole story, not just the pretty parts. I promise to be worthy of being chosen by you and worthy of being welcomed by your father, who taught me that being a man means protecting the people you love, not controlling them." When Father Murphy pronounced them husband and wife, James kissed his bride, then turned and shook my hand. "Thank you for raising the woman of my dreams," he said, "and thank you for teaching me how to be the man she deserves." The reception that followed was everything the first one wasn't: warm, authentic, filled with laughter instead of performance. Tony had outdone himself with the food, creating a menu that mixed comfort food favorites with elegant presentation. The prime rib was perfect, but it was the mac and cheese made from Sophia's grandmother's recipe that had people asking for seconds. Sophia had insisted on working the reception herself, serving food alongside my catering crew like she'd done as a teenager when I first started the business. She'd taken a leave of absence from her marketing job to work at Carter's Catering full-time, learning the business from the ground up. "I want to understand what you built," she'd told me. "I want to be part of something real instead of just consuming things other people made." The transformation had been remarkable. Gone was the anxious, status-conscious young woman who'd been ashamed of her working-class roots. In her place was someone confident, grounded, comfortable in her own skin. She still lived in the same apartment with James, but she spent 3 evenings a week having dinner at the house on Maple Street where she'd grown up, helping me plan menus and talking through the challenges of running a small business. "You know what I realized?" she'd said one evening as we worked on a new recipe for wedding cake. "I spent so many years trying to become someone worthy of being chosen, when what I really needed was to understand that I was chosen from the beginning, not because I was perfect, but because I was loved." Now, watching her dance with her husband under the fairy lights I'd strung between the same oak trees where she'd played as a child, I felt Sarah's presence stronger than ever. She would have been proud of the woman Sophia had become, not the entitled girl she'd been at the first wedding, but someone who'd learned the difference between wanting better and being better. The evening was winding down when Sophia approached me at the kitchen window where I was helping Tony coordinate cleanup. "Dad, can I steal you for a minute?" We walked to the edge of the yard, away from the celebration, where Sarah's rose garden bloomed in the soft evening light. Sophia had planted new roses there every year since she was 10, until it became a living memorial that changed with the seasons, but never disappeared. "I have something for you," she said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her purse. I recognized it immediately, the same paper with her 8-year-old letter and my response that had broken both our hearts 6 months ago. But now there was new writing in the margin, in her adult handwriting. "Dear Dad, I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that families aren't born, they're built. Thank you for building ours with love instead of obligation, choice instead of biology, and patience instead of perfection. You didn't just save my life when you found me. You gave me a life worth living. I am proud to be your daughter, not because of what you provided, but because of who you are. Love, Sophia. P.S. I will love you forever and always, just like you taught me." I had to clear my throat several times before I could speak. "You didn't need to." Bonsoir, too. Yes, I did. We both needed me to say it clearly, without drama or crowds or anyone else's agenda. Just us, just the truth. I love you, Dad, and I'm grateful every single day that you chose me. We hugged there in Sarah's rose garden, father and daughter, united not by blood, but by something stronger. The choice to love each other through everything, even when that love was tested by fear and shame and other people's agendas. Later, as the last guests were leaving and James was helping Tony load equipment into the catering truck, Sophia found me sitting on the back porch where I'd rocked her to sleep as a baby. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, settling beside me on the swing. "I was thinking about choices," I said. "How we make them every day without realizing it. Choose kindness over cruelty. Choose truth over convenience. Choose love over fear. Choose family over biology. Choose a family, period. However you define it, however you build it, however you protect it." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the evening sounds of the neighborhood, dogs barking, children playing, the distant hum of traffic that never quite stopped. Normal sounds of normal life, which suddenly seemed like the most precious gift in the world. "Dad?" Sophia's voice was soft in the gathering darkness. "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." "That's what fathers do, sweetheart. Real fathers, anyway. We show up, we stay put, and we love you through everything. Not because you're perfect, but because you're ours." She leaned against my shoulder the way she had as a child, and I thought about how simple it really was in the end. Love wasn't complicated. People made it complicated with their fears and expectations and agendas. But love itself was simple. You choose someone, and you keep choosing them day after day, year after year, until choosing becomes as natural as breathing. "You know what I learned through all of this?" Sophia said, her voice thoughtful. "I spent so many years afraid that you'd wake up one day and realize I wasn't worth the sacrifice, that you'd regret taking me in. And now I understand that love isn't about deserving or earning or being worth it. It's about showing up, like you did every morning when you made my lunch before school, like you did every night when you helped me with homework even though you were exhausted from work, like you did when I was 16 and screaming that I hated you because you wouldn't let me go to that party." I chuckled, remembering that particular battle. "You told me I wasn't your real father and couldn't tell you what to do. I was testing you, pushing to see if you'd finally give up, send me back where I came from. Instead, you grounded me for a week and made me help you cater the Henderson wedding as punishment. You complained the entire time, but I also learned how to fold napkins properly and arrange flowers, and I watched you treat every single person there, servers, guests, the bride's difficult mother, with respect and kindness. You never once raised your voice or acted like the job was beneath you. I was so embarrassed then, thinking my friends' dads had important office jobs while mine served food at parties." She paused, turning to look at me in the dim light from the kitchen window. Now I realize those friends' dads never taught them how to work with their hands, how to take pride in serving others, how to build something from nothing. They inherited their success. You earned yours. A firefly blinked near the rose bushes, then another. Soon, the garden was dotted with tiny lights, like nature's own string of fairy lights celebrating with us. "There's something else I want you to know," Sophia continued. "When James and I have children, and we will, they're going to know their grandfather as the man who saved their mother and loved her enough to let her make mistakes and find her way back home. They're going to grow up hearing stories about how Grandpa Ethan built a business with his bare hands and taught their mom that love isn't about perfect families, it's about committed ones. The thought of grandchildren, of little voices calling me Grandpa, of Sunday dinners and birthday parties and all the ordinary moments that make up a life, it overwhelmed me in the best possible way. They'll know about Grandma Sarah, too," she added. "How she chose me just like you did. How she would have loved them fiercely. And they'll understand that families come in all shapes and sizes, but the best ones are built on choice and commitment, not just biology. Blood might be thicker than water, but choice was thicker than both. And I had chosen Sophia Carter 22 years ago when she was 3 days old and abandoned on church steps. I was still choosing her now, and I would choose her tomorrow, and every day after that. Because that's what family means. Not the family you're born into, but the family you build. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one generation at a time, passing down love like a treasured heirloom that only grows more valuable with age. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts about family, love, and second chances in the comments below. Your support helps us bring you more stories about the power of choosing love over fear, truth over convenience, and family over everything else. Thank you for listening, and remember, the best families aren't perfect, they're just real.